So really the way that we build it is starting with our shells, building 5-note voicings. Root 7 or root 3. We'll look at root 3 in a minute here. Putting the 3rd and the 7th, rules of thumbs. I always like to have these catchy little phrases that Noah's really good with that too. Dissonance formulas and things. These phrases that sort of jog our memory here. So we'll have 3rd and 7th, 5th and 9th on both a major chord and a minor chord. And then we came up actually together with this flattening exercise to get the 3 basic chord types, right? So for example, we could flat the 7. Now we have a dominant chord. We're calling it a 9 chord because that is what's included in the extension. What I would advise as well is to change that 5th, because the 5th really doesn't add anything. It's not one of the essential root 7 or 3rd chord tones. And change it to a slightly more colorful 13th voicing there. Kind of nice too, in this position you have a stack of 4ths, so it gives that really sort of bright 4thy kind of sound, whereas oftentimes we're used to stacking 3rds and not 4ths. This also gives us the option if we see like a flat 13 sharp 9 chord, well, we'll sharp that 9, flat that 13, right? That's neither here nor there for the basic exercise, but once you see, and Richard, you actually brought this up of like the different modes that you use of, you know, like modal music maybe is more mode focused, but there's actually some times where even in a 2-5-1 functional progression, we might need to use a mode. So we'll mention that in a second. But our flattening exercise, we've gone from here, flatting the 7th, perfectly fine voicing as it is, maybe inject the 13th in there. And then we can flat the 3rd, and we'll move back to a 5th for our minor 7 or minor 9 if you like voicing, root 7, 3. That's the basic shell with the 2 hands, 5 and 9. So you could do this in a couple of different ways. I like this idea of continually flatting things. We went from major to flat 7 dominant, maybe switching to a 13, to a flat 3rd, keeping the 5th in there. And then from there, you have your other basic chord types, for example, or maybe they're not as basic, flat 5 minor, just flat the 5th, or going back to major. One of my favorite sounds like a sharp 5, voicing there. And then even if you're doing a 2-5-1, I'll use these 5 notes in a nice voice-led 2-5-1. Same idea for G minor, a root 3rd for C, and I've given you guys the sheets that do this, but it's good to know how to build them without having to just read the music. Root 3, 7, 9, 13 to a root 7, 3, 5, 9. Now that is totally diatonic. Like this is all F major harmony, right? It's all in the key. So you don't really need to think about, if it's easier for you, G Dorian. That's still just F major in disguise, right? Same thing with C Mixolydian. That's just F major in disguise, starting off of C. 2nd mode, right? 5th mode. Makes sense, right? 2 chord gets the 2nd mode, 5 chord gets the 5th mode. However, let's say we are getting tired of the vanilla sound, then this is where the modal approach does actually come into play. We could alter the dominant chord, which is a great move. Let's alter it in terms of both color tones, the sharp 5th, also known as the flat 13, and that sharp 5, you're right, or flat 13, and sharp 5 or flat 13, flat 9, couple different ways to say it. Beautifully frustrating thing about theory here. That implies the altered scale. C altered looks like this. And this is where we do have to think about a mode. That's technically a D flat melodic minor. And we have to take a couple of steps to get altered until you just kind of memorize the patterns. So we have to go up a half step, think about D flat major, or Ionian, right? There's our 2 names again, major or Ionian. And then we have to flat the 3rd to get melodic minor. And then we're really starting that off of the 7th mode, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's our 7th mode, and that gives us our altered scale. So let's say, yes, I do play F major technically over this one, the 2nd mode of F major. Here, we'd have to play a mode of a totally different scale, D flat melodic minor, starting on C. So now we get something more colorful. If I soloed only in the key of F. Might get some sounds like this. Right? Very, very cohesive. You hear like everything is kind of in the same planetary orbit, so to speak. However, let's get a little more colorful. Think more modally on the dominant chord. Now we get something a little bit more interesting, perhaps, or flavorful. Maybe I even think modally on this chord, right? A flat 5 or a sharp 11 implies a mode called Lydian, right?
Hey, Noah here. Just want to let you know really quick that most of the content you're actually seeing on this channel is coming from completely free masterclasses that we've been holding. So if you actually want to join and be a part of those masterclasses, again, it's totally free. Click one of the links in the description that will give you access to free resources, free courses, and of course the free masterclasses. And as soon as you're on the email list, you will be one of the first people to know when we are holding these masterclasses. And on top of that, you get lots of free sheet music and videos and resources as well. So highly recommend you sign up. You can also join our free online community, which is in Discord in a server there. So you can click the link down there for that as well. And we are on there interacting, hanging out, giving people feedback and advice, as well as on the free masterclasses, Zoom hangs, and feedback sessions. So again, highly recommend you get signed up, and I will see you there.
So there's two ways to think about modes that go with the chords as well, right? You can think of them as their own entity. For example, we could think of Dorian being the second mode of major. We could also think about Dorian as a G major scale with some changes to it. Right? If you like, this might be easier if you're thinking about things not in the context of a 2-5-1, as Richard said on the Discord. You're just kind of thinking of it all in the same key. However, you could also, let's say you had more of a modal tune where it's just G minor forever. You could think about that as a G major scale, flat the third, flat the 7, you got Dorian. All right, so every scale or mode you can think of in at least two different ways. And of course, the chord scale relationships. If you have I don't want to call it a vanilla 2-5-1, but I can't think of a better name for it right now. Right, everything is in the key, nothing is altered. The only flat we have or sharp we have is B flat. Right, versus now we're going outside the key. We got, D flat, G sharp in there. Have to think modally, and same thing on the one chord. I played this, for example. That would be a different mode. The sharp 5 would be a mode. You could play whole tone over it, but it would also be another mode called, not mixed Lydian flat 6. That's a flat 7. What is the mode? That's like the third mode. That would be the sixth mode, right? So what is it called? The Lydian augmented mode, right? So you'd have to play, right? So that is an alteration to the major scale of a sharp 4 and a sharp 5, Lydian augmented. You could think of it that way. That way is usually quicker, and that would go over that scale. Right? Really nice mode. Or you could think about that, that's coming from the third mode of melodic minor. I said sixth mode. Actually, I meant third mode, right? There it is right here. Same set of pitches, just starting off F. So that chord scale relationship, you can take that initial exercise we did and imply different modes off of the same root, for example. So you could play a major mode, right? Hold that down with the pedal, or, put it on a track and hear that in the background. Play your major mode, play your dominant mode, right? Whatever we do to the chord, flat 7, we have to do to the scale. F major mode, flat the 7. Mixed Lydian, goes over that. What do we do to this one? Flatted our third and our 7th. Do that to the scale. Nope, flat third, flat 7, and there's your Dorian mode, right? So you can think about either modes coming from a parent major scale or melodic minor scale, the more you get into it, or coming from alterations to the bass major scale. So those ways of thinking about it, one is usually going to be faster, And as Richard said, depending on the context, if it's in like a 2-5-1 that's functional in one key, then maybe you just think about all playing that major key from different starting places. If it's not moving in a functional or predictable way, then you might have to think about this mode versus some other mode way of thinking about it.